Our birthright is to be wholly connected to the web of life and to know ourselves as conscious nodes within the web of life. And so for me, contemporary shamanic practice within the trauma culture, which is our Western culture, is devoted to using the tools that we are given, insofar as we are able, to open the pathways to connect with the web of life in such a way that it becomes, we again become an integral part of it.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 112 of Toward a Better Life. This is your host, Kevin Pennell. The podcast features like-minded people sharing stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and so collectively. You can share your prose, your music or poetry, or storytelling for that matter, on the show. Just send them to me, kevin@towardabetterlife.com. If it's audio, please send it to me as an MP3 file. That would be great. Please subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast platform and keep following for magical insights into earth-based spirituality, self-development, and self-care. Also, remember to support the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, and if you'd like to dive into self-care, self-development, distant shamanic work, or Reiki, drop me a line, kevin@towardabetterlife.com for your free, that's right, free discovery call. You can also visit my website, towardabetterlife.com, for any past episodes of the program, blog entries, ways to enhance your spiritual journey, and a few products to assist you along the way. Be sure to check out the latest to the events page for details where you may join me at my upcoming workshop, Ancestral Healing, Becoming the Hollow Bone. That's coming this April to Maine. Send all your inquiries again to kevin@towardabetterlife.com. Now on to our little chat. In this episode, I'm welcoming back Manda Scott. Manda was once a veterinary surgeon and is now a novelist, smallholder, contemporary shamanic trainer, and host of the international chart-topping Accidental Gods podcast, which is quite good, quite entertaining to listen to, trust me. And she's best known for the Boudica Dreaming series. She's been shortlisted for the Orange Prize, the Edgar, and the Saltire Award, and won the McIlvanney Prize. With her wife, Faith Tilleray, she is a co-creator of the Thrutopia Masterclass. Her new novel, Any Human Power, is a Thrutopian political thriller woven through the Boudica-style dreaming, a new mythos for a new reality. In our last chat, we touched on shamanic work and how it can help us to connect with the world around us. We're exploring shamanic work further in this episode to see how it helps us connect with the web of life. I'm here to welcome back Manda Scott to Toward a Better Life. Hello, Manda. How are you today?
I'm good, Kevin. Thank you. It's cold here, but it's probably not as cold as it is with you. But nevertheless, I'm wearing multiple layers.
Oh, I don't know. It was yesterday. It was in the 20s.
Yeah, that's old money. I have no idea what that is in degrees centigrade. Is that good?
It would be probably below zero.
Oh, right. Okay, yes, it was below zero here too, but only just.
Yeah.
But last week it was -8, and I was in Oxford at the Real Farming Conference. I left my wife, and all the water froze to the ponies, and she was hauling buckets every hour because it would last an hour and then freeze. So I'm very unlikely to ever be allowed to go away again in the winter. so yeah, make the most of it.
And you had quite an experience last week with that, because I know that we talked a little bit about it. And tell us a little bit about particularly the animism part, that was really interesting.
Sure. It was. So this is the first time I've been, although people keep inviting me, and because winter and leaving, I don't usually go. But this time I was speaking on 2 separate days. So this is, to put it in context, there is in Oxford the Farming Conference, which is the industrial ag people. And 11 years ago, a group of regenerative ag people decided it would be a good idea to have something at the same time. And so they set up what they call the real Oxford Farming Conference. And then they franchised that out as an idea all around the UK. And it runs on Thursday and Friday of the second week of January. And this week, on the Wednesday, a group called the Animate Earth Collective, which is Rachel Fleming, Angharad Wynne, and Colin Campbell, got together with the UN has a Conscious Food Systems Alliance group, which I knew nothing about, but the Conscious Food Systems Alliance held the early part of the day. So somebody laid out, we were in a church, which is slightly weird, but somebody laid out an altar, and on the ground, it was mostly ivy and holly and yew that had, from trees that they had asked and had said, yes, we need to come. We'd all brought some earth, so it was a bronze bowl, and we all put a bit of earth in, and various other things. We weren't allowed to burn candles, we weren't supposed to burn smudge. There was kind of rules, but anyway, the altar was there. And the Conscious Food Systems Alliance had invited 6 elders from all different parts of the globe to come and take part and talk to us, and they all stepped forward and spoke in their own languages and blessed the altar. And then the Conscious Food Systems Alliance people, who are all just so inspiring, explained how they'd got to this within the UN, which is a bureaucracy, but their realization quite a long time ago, I think, that the data points was not where it was at, but what they were being paid for was showing that data points were moving. But they knew that that wasn't what the people they were working with cared about. They cared about their relationship with the land. And so after, I think, some quite impressive lobbying, they were allowed to set up the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, which is open to anyone who wants to join it, who cares about our animate earth, about really connecting with the land. So they were there, and then Angharad, who's Welsh, and Welsh is her first language, came and held a ceremony. It was so moving. She had a young woman who played the violin and had a foot drone, and the music was singing into the marrow of my bones. I was weeping in ways I haven't for a long time. And we created a ceremony that we all took part in, and then talked about our own relationships to our own land, or to land that mattered to us. So nobody's claiming ownership over the land ever, but some of us steward parts of land. And so what was our relationship there? What really matters to us? How can we connect to it more deeply? And that took up quite a lot of time, because people really, anyone who came was there because that's what mattered to them. And then at the end of the day, we had a panel, which was Rupert Sheldrake, who created the concept of morphic resonance fields, and Colin Campbell, who is white Botswanan, but a lot of his childhood was spent with the elders, and he's been initiated in their rites. So he really does bridge the two worlds. And me, and a lovely young woman from Sarah, who I think is 2nd generation Black from London, and is a permaculture practitioner, and her entire religion is based around the earth. So all of us had a spiritual practice based in the earth, and we just talked about that really for an hour. So what really struck me about that was the engagement of the people. The church only held 100, and they were quite fierce about not letting more in because fire regs. But someone stood up at the end from the Land Workers Alliance and said that they knew at least a dozen people who would have wanted to be there if there had been space. And everybody else was going, yes, me too. So next year we're going to have space for 500.
Nice.
And it was great. And then Colin and a land whisperer, Kilpatrick, both held another workshop the day after. I wasn't able to get in, but that was grand. And then I was given an hour to talk about Thrutopias, and that inevitably means talking about shamanic practice. So in the middle of, otherwise, I was in on panels about how to make a microdairy work. You know, there was really very practical stuff, and there was a lot of animist stuff as well. And it was amazing. I was so impressed with the way that it was organised, and the fact that it even happened. And 3,000 people is not much by US standards, but by UK standards, to get that many people to get to Oxford in January when it's -8 was quite an impressive achievement, I felt.
Sounds like it. It's reminiscent of a couple of festivals we've had here in the States. Like, I remember up in New England, there was a gathering, and to my knowledge, it's still going on, but it was called the Common Ground Fair. And it went on for several days, and it was actually juried to the point of, whether or not you were allowed to vend at that event depended on where you were, as far as whether you were holistic in your approach, if you were interested in the land, truly interested in the land, or if you just wanted to make a dollar. And they just said, we respect that you want to make a dollar, but not with us. You need to go someplace else. And it was, it's some people would say, well, that's heartless. I said, no, it's not. You're focused. You're focused on a need.
This is what we're for.
Yeah. And it kind of, and I'm going to kind of transition here, because when we look at all this stuff, they're all bridges. And, you know me as far as reading, and I just, like I said before we started recording, I just recently finished the first in the Boudica series that you wrote some time ago. And the next one's going to be coming up. And I enjoy historical fiction, but the thing that I think about is historical fiction, not that I want to live in the past, but I look at some of the information that's from the past and how can I meld that into where we are today and where we can be in the future. We can't, I don't want to relive what was there, because we've made a lot of really good progress through the years, but don't be stuck in the past. And I think that's one of the things that I saw even in some of the Druid and pagan and Wicca movements, as we say, okay, we really don't know what took place with original Druids back in.
We never will.
No, and we never will. So we take some basic ideas that we have in mind, and we kind of go with it and say, this is how I want this to be, and this is how I want to move forward. And when I say I, it does begin as a microcosm, doesn't it? It begins with what do I want to do, you know? And this kind of moves into the idea, and I'm going to move into that with the idea of shamanism, because we talked about that last time, and I said, we need to talk about this some more.
And so here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. And you mentioned about how we look at bridges, and that's how I view shamanism. And I don't care what discipline you want to follow, what philosophical approach you want to take to it. The term in and of itself, as we know, has its origins basically among the Tungus people of what we know as Russia, and yet we have flavors of it in the indigenous people or first people of the Americas. We also have, and I've seen, Celtic shamanism. So let's even just begin with that, because I've got some ideas, but let's hear your ideas, because this is about you, not me. But how would you define shamanism?
So for me, shamanic practice, even then we're in an interesting semantic concept. So I would say shamanism in its whole sense is the original spirituality of humanity. Okay. That for all of our human existence, as far as we can tell, we knew ourselves to be integrated with, an integral part of the web of life, and certain people within each collective of people that we would now call a tribe were ones who had particular facility for connecting to the gods and the guides and the spirits of the land. And I think that is still extant in the First Nations of most continents, insofar as they have not been annihilated by the trauma culture. Our culture, somewhere around 10,000 years ago, lost that sense of unity with the land, and therefore we lost our shamanic past. It did not everywhere. I think the Romans brought the trauma culture to Britain, and I think before that we were still an initiation culture. There was a really fascinating piece came around on WhatsApp, I think, from a friend that the BBC had put up, where someone had done the DNA, and previously, because historical archaeological science was done by largely straight white men from Oxford and Cambridge, they decided that women obviously moved to the tribes of their, quotes, husband. And what the BBC are saying is that DNA has showed that actually the men moved in with the women, and that descent was matrilineal in the Bronze Age in the UK. And every idea exists for a little while until someone's turned it over. But our concepts of the past, I would say, are almost certainly wrong, and the only question is to what degree and where and when. However, exactly as you said, if this is who we were even closely, then this is who we can be again. Our birthright is to be wholly connected to the web of life and to know ourselves as conscious nodes within the web of life. And so for me, contemporary shamanic practice within the trauma culture, which is our Western culture, is devoted to using the tools that we are given, insofar as we are able, to open the pathways to connect with the web of life in such a way that it becomes, we again become an integral part of it. And to a lesser or greater extent, we might succeed. But I don't think anyone in our culture can be a shaman. We can be shamanic practitioners. But if we haven't been born and grown in an initiation culture, then we're lying to ourselves, broadly.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point to make too, Manda, is that, I do shamanic practices. I'm not a shaman.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
I didn't go 12 years. I didn't get born into anything.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the initial exposure that I had was probably close to 20 years ago. And I can see after all the years, and there's ebbs and flows for me personally when I look at this. And I'm more in a flow state now than I was 2 years ago, because I've reconnected. And I think that's a magic piece of this. And I would encourage people that when they start connecting with things like this, spirituality, shamanic practices, whatever it is that you do, understand this, that we're human and we're going to have the ebbs, we're going to have the flows.
Yeah, everything is in a sine wave, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And if as long as we accept that, it'll make life a lot easier for us as we move forward, because if we say, man, what happened to me? I used to have all this vibrance and all this great connection with the natural world, and I could feel and hear and everything, the animals, the birds, the fly, everything, and I was just really in touch, and then poof, it was gone. Yeah. And I think what it was a matter of is that we just got back into the trauma culture for whatever reason. It's just the way it is. And we can beat ourselves up and say, oh no, I failed and stuff. No, it was just a time to move. And you saw some stuff in that trauma culture that makes you think, oh, I know a better way. And before you know it, you start moving that direction again to where you were before. But you're not, and that's a misnomer, where I was before, because now, a spiral. Exactly. Yeah. I'm going to move into another realm now where it's going to shift a little bit more. And is that how you view it? It sounds like it, just because we're agreeing.
Yes, we are agreeing. Yes, totally. And I've been teaching this now for 2 decades, and exactly that's the students who come going, but everything's gone backwards. No. Also, I think I see it sometimes like a stair. There's quite a long period where you're just coasting, and then everything, your entire reality changes, and everything you thought you knew, you just don't. And then you arrive at a new stable point and you coast for a little bit, or at least let's say coasting is wrong. You learn the parameters of the world as it is now, and you learn how to practice with that, and you learn how to engage with it. And then something happens, it all falls apart again, and the boundaries of reality are not where you thought they were. And it feels like, gosh, I'm trying to remember, who was the guy who first described ley lines? His name will come back to me. Albert.
I know what you're talking about too.
Anyway, he describes, when he first discovered that pendulums work, he describes it as akin to an experience he had as a younger man when he was in the Arctic, like you are, because you're a Victorian explorer, and he was running across the ice, and it was brilliant blue sky, total sunshine, everything's brilliant white. And then he stepped through a hole in the ice without realizing it. Instantly, he was in cold, black, freezing water where he didn't even know which way was up, and he couldn't breathe. And it was totally disorienting. And obviously he got out because he got to write his books about ley lines. Right. But I think sometimes that moment where the boundaries of reality disintegrate and everything that you believe to be true just isn't anymore can be really disorienting. That level of disorienting. Alfred Watkins, finally, that was his name.
That's it.
And I think learning to hold steady in those phases and just breathe into it and accept that this is part of, a new cocoon falling off, and now you're a different kind of caterpillar than you were, and one day maybe a butterfly, but not just yet. Whatever. It's just about everything is different, but I will learn to navigate this is really important.
Yeah. You have a wonderful website there and wonderful opportunities for people to learn about shamanic practices and so forth. That said, if someone were looking at this and they just felt like, yeah, maybe this is a direction I want to head, what's a good place to start with at that practice in their life, would you say?
That's really hard because I don't think this is a thing that you can learn by reading books or
No.
It's experiential only,
Right.
and truly, I don't think there's any indigenous culture where people are not held in that learning.
Right.
Because I think one of the things that I am fairly clear on is this is the ancient spirituality of humanity. It's also incredibly powerful, and it's not safe. Particularly, we can hold boundaries of safety, but when I was offered training a long, long time ago, what I was told was, it's between 12 and 20 years. We don't know how long, and if you're still alive at the end of it, then you passed.
Right.
And the pass rate's not very high.
No.
And also your sanity might completely disintegrate along the way. And so now when we're teaching the students, we're encouraging them very early to begin to build relationships with a spirit guide of whatever sort that you would trust with your sanity and your life. And the problem comes, one of the many problems that arise in our culture is that we're very used to a quick fix and we're very, very good at lying to ourselves.
Yeah.
And finding authenticity and integrity and grounding and something that you actually trust with your sanity and your life, as opposed to, I would like to think that I can, because, I'm very good at thinking happy thoughts and baskets of kittens and dancing through the meadows is all very lovely. And then you meet something that basically wants to eat you for breakfast and you have no defenses. And it's not, the energy is a very interesting thing, and human intent, cleanly honed, is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Yep. But the absolute imperative is cleanly honed, and that takes a lot of practice. Even back in Boudica's time, 2,000 years ago, in the islands of Britain, it was between 12 and 20 years training. And I think most of that was learning how to step out of our own way. And people were not as much in their own way, I think, then, as we are now. They didn't have Facebook and Twitter and Blue Sky and a consumer society trying to teach them that they were separate. They were brought up in an initiation culture that told them they were connected to the web of life. And we have to learn that reconnection as we're going along. So it's harder.
It is. And the first things that you said was, as far as this isn't something that you learned from a book, this is something that is very experiential.
You need a guide.
Yeah, you do. And I know that Michael Harner has mentioned that in his books that you start to practice this, you need to make very, very sure that you have someone that you can trust, that you can work with. Yeah. Those are two factors. And this is not somebody, and with all due respect, this is somebody that you meet at a conference someplace and they just connect with you. And you really need to find out what is that connection and what is their motive and what is there's the magic word, intent. Yeah. And if their intent is selfish as opposed to selfless, you need to find that out early, because there are plenty out there that will take you. There's no other way to put it. And just stay true and find something. And your advice about finding a guide, that is so important. I just got a new tattoo a few weeks ago,
Yay.
And it's one that is very special to me, because I have, in addition to my spirit guide, I have spirit animals, and I have two primary ones among some others. But the first primary one that really, really connected with me, and I connected with it, is the red-tailed hawk. So that is the sign that's on one arm. Well, what's going on the other arm, I didn't expect it this quick, is going to be the timber wolf. And I look
Nice.
at the pictures of those two, and I recognize that there are a lot of facets to anything like this. And that's what you find when you start to connect with the web of life, as you find out the qualities. And people say, well, how do you know what your spirit animal is? And there's a whole litany of information to go through with that, but it kind of bases itself on what do you feel connected to? What animals do you feel connected to? And those will often be the guide. Yeah.
I would also say that not everybody has a guide that is an animal
Right.
or that shows itself as an animal. And I think this is one of I get quite cross with what I call Disney shamanism, which says, you know,
like
you do
that.
your first journey and you find your spirit animal guide, and then you do your second journey and you find your upper world guide, and it's bollocks, frankly. Because it can take years to get past your own projections, to get to what's actually there. And what's there might be a stone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a stone that really talks to you, you don't need anything else. Or maybe you go out in the field and every stone in the field talks to you. Or the north wind talks to you. Or a mountain talks to you. Or a river talks to you. And it may not be what you thought you wanted in the first place, but it's what is there and is making a connection. And I think it's really important that people not learn to listen rather than imposing on the world what's there. And it's really hard, because even when you've been doing this a long time, I listened to somebody recently who was talking more about mediumship, but it's broadly a similar skill, who said you've got 3 seconds between something arising and your brain beginning to tell you that what you really heard was this. And this might be something different. And learning to really listen just for those 3 seconds before your ego starts twisting stuff is quite a hard skill to learn, and is absolutely imperative, I think. And in a 20-minute journey, that's a lot of being very still inside and keeping track of the 3-second insights and not turning them into an ego-based narrative.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Totally. The ego is there. I used to explain the ego is there it's the force, if you will, that keeps me from running out in front of freight trains. Its desire is its desire is to protect my human body. That's its work, and that's fine. But the trouble is, I had a very dear friend of mine that explained to me once that he held his hands out and he says, when we're born equally, and we have our spirit and we have our ego. And what happens is we learn as we go through life that we learn that if we scream loud enough, we'll get the bottle of milk. If we scream loud enough, we'll get the candy bar. If we scream loud, and we just leave the spirit down here because it doesn't get us anything, right? And the anything is anything in the physical world.
It does, but not things that our consumer culture tells us are good.
Well, that's the point. It is just put down, and at some point, this says, okay, enough's enough. And you start to bring it back into balance, and you start to go back into the sine wave, which is what it is. And the ego is good for us to help this physical body, this shell, this vehicle, as it were, in the world that we live in. But to be able to go beyond that body is what I look at, and I think, okay, it does reawaken some things. And I was talking with someone just yesterday that they didn't know this side of me, and because I was their body worker, their massage therapist for I've known him for 6 or 7 years. He never knew this side of me.
Right, interesting.
Because I was telling him
interested? Was he interested?
He says, "Oh my gosh!" He says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, because I mentioned, I said, journey work, deep meditation, blah, blah. And he says, No, he doesn't.
Right.
When I started getting into some of the details, he's going, wow, you can do that? And I said, yeah, but it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It is something that you take one baby step at a time. And that's why I like Harner's comments that don't try to do your first journey on your own. It's best to have somebody there.
Yeah, and someone who can hold the feeding back without having to tell you what it really meant, or even telling you that this was your ego, because it probably is in the first few journeys, but that's okay. You still got to take the risk, and the only way you can really tell is testing it in the real world. and then see what happens. And the real world's a really good test of authenticity, and it's always there. So I had a thought when you were talking about ego. So I'm in internal family systems therapy, which is very, very shamanic. I'm really impressed. And what I am perceiving a bit as ego, some aspects of ego, is that a long time ago, somewhere in my past history, aspects of myself experienced something as traumatic. And trauma, certainly in current thinking, is defined as a moment frozen in time. And that bit then is locked. And another bit arises that goes, okay, that's never happening again. And whenever it thinks that there is a danger of that, whatever that was, happening again, shame or guilt or vulnerability, or sometime when someone exploited a vulnerability or anything, it'll leap forward and demand that behaviors happen that see that doesn't happen again. And I think a lot of our schooling in the Western culture, the trauma culture, is deeply traumatizing, and is designed basically to churn out people to go into factories, and everything is done by a bell, and you will have no free time, and you will be consistently aiming for high points that are guaranteed to set you against the people with whom you should be in community, who are your peer group. It's a disaster. But it also sets us up, particularly when we come to start working with spiritual stuff, to see learning in that context. And then all the bits inside that were quite traumatized by our learning all have protector parts that step forward and tell us, okay, this is how you need to answer this so that you get top marks. And this is how you need to behave so that you shine, or this is how you need to behave so that you vanish in the class. And we've all got authority issues that often revolve around a learning situation. And that can cripple our capacity to learn spiritual stuff, because we have to somehow start being able to process that. And I would say we have basically probably less than a decade to sort ourselves out, or frankly, we're finished. And collapse is happening around us. Mm-hmm. Collapse. You just had a bloodless coup by the fascists in your country. And that's a bit scary, but they are going to break the system. Yeah. And the system did need to be broken. And maybe enough of us can generate enough life and compassion and connection to the web of life that in the broken system, things will arise. But we haven't got very long.
No.
And so doing the healing work, I think if anyone's interested in spiritual stuff, doing the work to heal ourselves, our connection to each other and the web of life, and some of that you can do on your own. Yeah. It's useful. Yeah, having a therapist is absolutely great, but there's a lot of online work. Thomas Hubel has some, the Internal Family Systems, various groups have some, there's Heart Math Institute has some. Mm-hmm. There will be other people where you can join with other groups. Tara Brach has some. Lots of people, actually. Before I came off Facebook, because Zuckerberg going full on incel is quite scary, there were lots and lots of these come and work with us. And you can do a lot of the healing work so that when you are in a teaching situation, all the traumatized parts of yourself are not necessarily trying to tell you how to be. Did that make sense?
It does. And I go back to the thing as far as like the shamanic work and how it's not really something that is necessarily separated from our livelihood, and not livelihood, our lifestyle.
Yeah, it's integral to it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly where I was going with it. And that's the piece that I really want us to be able to convey to folks, is that it is available out there, and it's not something that is going to set you necessarily all that apart from what it is that you're doing, but it helps to enhance your awareness and enhance your spiritual life. And I think that's the thing that's missing. I really do. Because it goes back to that thing I was saying about the spirit and the ego. It's so far out of balance right now. We're so self-centered in the West that everything is, like you said, with the society that we live in, with the educational system we live in, it's the trauma-based system that we live in. You will do this, you will do that, and this is how you need to do it if you want to succeed. Yeah. And I grew up with reading. We had required reading, believe it or not, in the 10th grade in English class. I will never forget that. But we read in 10th grade George Orwell's 1984.
Cool. I have
And
no idea what 10th grade is. What age are you at 10th grade?
I was what was I? 16, 15, 16.
Well, okay.
And that was a mind blower to me. And as I'm reading through this, and of course we wanted to go into Animal Farm next. And when you were sharing about the trauma society and the trauma educational system, all I was thinking about is 1984.
Right.
The Ministry of the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of, it's like, go back to the tribal ways. I'm sorry. Yeah. And this is part of the thing I talk about, that we're not reverting back into.
No, we have to go forward. We can't go back.
Yeah. I don't want to go back 2,000 years. I don't.
I wouldn't mind, but there's too many of us. You can't support 8.5 billion in a hunter-gatherer. Also, we don't have the skill set.
No.
So we have to move forward. We have to move forward anyway. But
but take some of the wisdom that was there in the practical sense. It's one of the things, and it's not so much plugging your book, but I'll say it. Some of the stuff that I really appreciated in the Boudica book, the first one that I read, was the underlying spiritual awareness that was there. And it was common. It was a normal practice within that culture, that you think spiritually first, and you think about how it relates to the tribe and the group. And it's not all about, look at me. No, what I do is going to affect what can I bring? What can I do to assist? What can I do to help? And that's where we need to go. But
I think we can also do that now. I'm just pausing because I was remembering talking to someone. I don't know. It was on a workshop that I'd had recently, and what we came to was the understanding that anyone, wherever they are in the world as an adult, can commit themselves in service to life now. Because people have a tendency to think, when I've got the right job, when I've moved to the right place in the world, when I've got the right partner, and the kids and the dog and the cat and the house, then I'll do it. No, you could commit yourself in service to life at this moment. And then you need to ask the web of life, what do you want of me? And be still enough to hear the answers. And we could do that. That's not something that you have to go back 2,000 years. We could do that now. And we can learn from the indigenous people. I was listening to a fantastic podcast the other day called Two-Eyed Seeing, I think. And it was someone talking to an indigenous woman who works for the, I think, Oregon Forestry Department. And she was saying they finally persuaded people to pay the indigenous elders as much as they would pay a scientific researcher, consultant, to go out into the forest with them and go, okay, so you cut down that tree and not the others, and then we cut down that tree. And that way you'll still get what timber you need, but you'll end up with a resilient forest that frankly isn't going to burn down in the way that it does when you decide that the white people know best and you plant rows of monocultures and create climate change. It's not just the rows of monocultures, but they don't help. And so I think, there are green shoots. We just don't hear about them because both the legacy media and the social media are devoted to maintaining division and business as usual. But there's a lot out there. The wonderful thing about podcasts, as you know, is we can say what we think and we can put it out there and people can hear it. And while that's still a thing, we can create networks and ecosystems of sharing and exchange of ideas and best practice that creates the ability to do other stuff. And I would say to anyone listening, you can commit all of your life, all of your soul, heart and soul in service to life now, right now, and then see what happens.
Yeah.
Go and ask the mountain, or go and ask the tree in your backyard, or go and ask the nearest running water, and asking and asking and asking. Sometimes it takes a long time. Sandra Ingerman has a bit in her book on soul retrieval where she had something in her back, some really bad pain, and the medics said basically, sorry mate, you're stuck, nothing's going to happen. She said, no, that's not a thing. And she She wrote something on a slip of paper, put it under her pillow, and she took this into the dream every night for 6 months. At the 6 months point, she had a dream where someone stepped out from behind her sofa and did a healing on her, and then she was better. But she was prepared to commit the time and didn't give up because it didn't happen in a couple of minutes. And I think that's really important, is that we give things the time that they take and really stay committed to, this is what I do. I am in service to life. And then everything I do, every moment of my day becomes more alive. It's kind of good, really.
It's very relieving. It's very uplifting.
Yeah.
It's rewarding. Keep going. and it is important if we want to see this shift take place and continue, and not to go political, but it is a matter of concern that, and I was going to say life or death.
We are facing extinction. I don't know that people have got their head around that. We're in the middle of the sixth mass extinction. It took thousands of years for the dinosaurs to become extinct. And we're doing it in one person's lifetime. In geological terms, that's faster than anything has ever moved before.
And I heard a speaker. Now I'm pulling your point here. I can't remember his name, but he was on Druidcast yesterday, and it's actually from an older recording from back in 2014, I think it was. And he was, in our terminology, it would be called basically a forensic pathologist, and a very, very interesting guy. He gets really earthy and really funny in places. And this guy had thought. A lot of us have heard about the 24-hour clock, as far as we're at 8.5 billion years, and blah 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 blah. How far we're going to go, and it's not 8.5 billion people, and we're at about 4.5 billion years, as far as the age of the planet, and we have another roughly 4.5 billion to go. Okay, that's great. He says, here's something to think about, and that is that the dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurus, Brontosaurus, all the other sauruses, they were around for basically an hour of that 24-hour time clock. And they maintained for quite a while, considering that we've been around for 4 minutes. And we think we're number one.
I know. It's the sense of scale is pathetic, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
And you realize that, okay, maybe we do have a lot more than just a pea-sized brain, but we have that for a reason. We should be using it. And we also have a connection with the natural world that we not lose sight of, because I think in many cases we have. And I think there's a wonderful movement in the other direction. I say other direction in the sense that we are trying to do what we can. There are other people, and when you say stuff like a primitive skills school, for an example, and the first thing you think about is some militia someplace. It's not that at all. It's more of a case of understanding that I connect with the trees, I connect with the flora, I connect with the fauna, I connect with the stones, I connect with the water, I connect with everything, because everything is living, everything is alive. And if I really get a good hold on that, it's going to change my perspective. It's not going to happen necessarily overnight, but it is going to change your perspective when you start to say, today I turned the water off more than I used to.
Right.
Little things.
Yeah.
You have to start someplace.
But it's cumulative and it's self-reinforcing, I would say. You end up in a really good, a really lovely, enduring, self-reinforcing set of spirals that then everything is alive. You look up at the moon and your heart bursts with joy and love and gratitude. And it doesn't really matter what's going on in the political world if you can do that. And I'm sure if I were in Gaza and the bombs were raining down, I probably wouldn't be looking at the moon with my heart blazing with joy. But I'm not, so I can give thanks to the things for which I am genuinely grateful. And I think there is also a cumulative energetic effect of that. There's a sense sometimes that I have of connecting to a web of other people, and I don't know who they are, but I can feel their presence when we sit very still, and particularly when I move into gratitude, compassion, joyful curiosity, the kind of heart-mind triad. There's a sense that we are not alone, and that these things also have their additive impact as well.
It does. How's Thrutopia doing?
Good. Do you mean the book or the concept? The book's doing great. I was really impressed. And the concept, I've got a deadline of noon tomorrow of putting together an application for an R&D sprint. But it's a local national film company that wants, what they want really is ways of expressing the climate emergency that will land. And what we're putting in is, the knowledge deficit model doesn't really stand up. That yes, it wouldn't hurt for people to understand where we're at, but we need to give people agency and direction. They need to have a sense that there is another world that is possible, and that there is a route to get there that they believe in, and know what they can actually do tomorrow, which, on a spiritual level, commit to being in service to life, learn to listen. Those are two things anybody could do tomorrow. And I haven't put this in the television, but I genuinely believe that the spiritual basis is the most important, because it provides a foundation for everything else. But Thrutopia is a concept. Apparently there was a meeting at Chatham House, which is a government place in the UK, and they were all talking about Thrutopias just before Christmas. I wasn't invited, but still, I probably wouldn't want to go to Chatham House because I'd have to wear a suit, and that's not my thing. So yeah, it sounds like the idea is beginning to gain traction, and I'm trying to raise some money for another version of the masterclass and for a prize. What I really want, if anybody out there listening knows how to make this happen, I think the Oscars should have a Thrutopian category. I said that to my senior apprentice, who used to be a stunt actor, and she said, good luck with that. It took us 20 years to get stunt acting to the Oscars, and there's a stunt act in every single film, and nobody even is making Thrutopian films yet. So how can you have a category? If there's a category, people will make the films. That's not, we haven't got much time. Let's make this happen.
Well, it wasn't completely out of left field, although it kind of sounded that way as far as how's Thrutopia, because I see the two. I see the shamanic practices and Thrutopia as being intertwined.
Totally. Well, partly both arose out of my own, my shamanic practice is shamanic, and the whole Thrutopian concept, insofar as I use it, arose out of that. I stole the term. I borrowed the term from my good friend, Rupert Reed. We work together on this now, so I didn't make it up. But we have to, if we are going to make it through the pinch point we're in at the moment, we have to understand that a better world is possible. We have to be able to see what it looks like, and we have to have the roots to get there. We need motivation, direction, and agency. Or I've got engagement, enthusiasm, and empowerment, because I like alliteration. But we need those things, and those of us who create story in whatever form, I think we have a moral responsibility to do this. This is why we were saying before, I loved historical novels. I wrote historical novels for 20 years. And now people keep sending me little emails going, will you review this novel and give us an endorsement? I think, I'm really sorry, but I do not have time to bury my head in the past. Unless this novel is offering a really clear, this is who we were, this is who we could be, and this is the route to get there, I think you, the publisher, and you, the author, are wasting your time. Because almost every historical novel I've ever read is embedded in the value system of the trauma culture. And that's not useful anymore. We need a new value system. We will not get through to us being an initiation culture again unless we can abandon the values of the trauma culture. And supporting them is basically propaganda now. So if you're out there listening and you create anything, please don't create propaganda that props up the trauma culture. We need that culture to go. We need to, as in Vanessa Andreotti's words, we need to hospice modernity. Then we can move into something different.
Okay.
I think.
There you go. So as the last time, this is enlightening, and this is wonderful. to be able to chat like this, and we may have bounced a little bit here and there, but I think the crux of all of this is to find yourself that connection with the world around you to the point where you become a viable part of it instead of just kind of using it, where you can be a part, find your service, find your work, and find yourself in that process. When you find yourself, go with it. I mean, just and love every moment of it, and understanding there are going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but ultimately it is beautiful. It is a wonderful experience. Any thoughts that you have that you want to leave with today?
No, I think that was absolutely beautiful. But I would just second for understanding that this is possible, that it is possible to be completely strong-hearted, clear-hearted, open-hearted, full-hearted, connection with the web of life, and that it becomes a reciprocal flow. And provided you can find the place inside that's still enough to hear, then you can ask, what do you want of me? And then respond. And it's so enriching and so enlivening and so rewarding. And I think it's the only way we're going to get through. So it would be a good thing if more people could do this. And if anyone has ideas of how else we can get through, please tell me. But I would probably sleep much better. But I think it's possible. I just very briefly, I had a podcast with Chris Bache, who wrote Diamonds in Heaven. Yeah, it's LSD in the Mind of the Universe, and he's in your part of the world, or at least let's say your side of the Atlantic. I realize that's a big place. And he way back 30 years ago now, he over the span of 20 years, with a 6-year gap in the middle because his wife said you have to stop, he took 73 industrial doses of LSD. As he was a professor of philosophy of religion. And he was doing this as a practice to what does it feel like and how do we connect to whatever is the all that is. And he was taken on a very obvious learning journey. And in the last 3, before he was basically told he could stop now, he feels that he met the future human, what humanity becomes. And it's not guaranteed. It's a possibility within the frame of all possibilities, but it is possible. And I think that's a really useful thing to know, and then we can work towards it.
Work towards it. And that's what we want to do. Thank you, Manda. Enjoy your day.
Thank you for your
always.
time. Lovely.
Bless
it's
you.
Great to talk to you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks a lot, Manda, for sharing with us once again and helping us understand this time around a little bit more about shamanic practices and connecting with the web of life. And I just love that term. It's so true and so much to the point that we really do need to learn to connect more with the natural world around us. And that includes everything, folks. So just have a listen again if you need to, or visit our website to learn more and tune in to Manda's Accidental Gods podcast. And be sure to visit our website too, mandascott.co.uk. There's a link in the show notes for Manda Scott. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, and if you'd like to dive a little deeper into self-care, self-development, shamanic work, drop me a line, kevin@towardabetter.life.com, for a free discovery call. You can also visit my website, towardabetter.life.com, for past episodes, blog entries, and ways to enhance your spiritual journey, and a few products along the way. And be sure to check out the events page. It's something new there, and it's got some details where you may join me at my upcoming workshop, Ancestral Healing, Becoming the Hollow Bone. That's coming this April to May, and it's not too late to sign up. Just send all your inquiries to me, kevin@towardabetter.life.com. Please be sure to follow Toward a Better Life through your favorite podcast platform, and leave a review for me on Apple Podcast. It just helps allow a little bit more to spread the word about a program and to help, create a better life for many of us. If you have any questions, or if you want to share a story, music, prose, if it's an audio file, please send it to me as an MP3, or if you want to be my guest, please write me, kevin@towardabetter.life.com. Till next time, till next week, enjoy your journey toward a better life.